Who needs some long intro here on this Friday? We're late as it is. We don't want to waste any time. We want to just get to our picks, etc. JB, don't start that because I have mine too. Today I'm in New York City, so we're going the New York City route, which is where is she? There she is. Starbucks action. Okay. So we want to talk about a couple things. We're going to have my unofficial East rankings at the end of this episode of the podcast. We want to thank the Around the Nation podcast. Yeah, yes, you did. I will give you that. That guy helped right over there. We want to thank the Around the Nation podcast, Pat Coleman and Keith McMillan, for A, tooling on my picks last week. That's one. But two, having a good 5 minutes of the Brett Segala interview that we did. Yeah. What a great interview. Both of them were great interviews this week, but a lot of people have paid attention to the Brett Segala one. We wanted sort of, there's no easy way to say this, but okay, we lost in the shuffle until you were doing some of your pre-talk with him about the fact that his parents are both deaf, I believe. We know his father is, and according to a note we'd gotten, his mom as well. And we kind of got clued in when we realized that James Segala was a Hall of Famer at Gallaudet, as we showed on the screen and everything. And Gallaudet's still very close with him. They followed our social media on this on pretty much yesterday all day. We saw some back and forth going on. But we did create a closed caption version, a little harder than you think it is, but we got it to work for the most part. It was a little glitchy there, I noticed, and a little fast in some of the text, but we did what we could with the shortened time frame. And what a great story and backstory. It was covered by D3Football.com, I believe, last year a little bit. So, overcoming, his parents had to overcome a lot, obviously, in their lives. And it can't be easy for, a child to be in that scenario, but they are just a tremendous family. And Breeze, his brother as well. What a great family overall. Yeah. And we want to take our hats off. If I could show my hair right now, I would. But to the whole Segala family, and we appreciated all their support with that podcast episode. If you haven't watched it yet, go to our In the Huddle page on Facebook, and the closed caption version is in the comments so that we didn't create a second, confusing scenario there as well. And Josh's family as well rallied around his interview in the second half of that episode. So we are extremely tired by this point of the season. This is that kind of drudging time between business and podcasting and everything else that goes on in life. This is kind of that season. But when we do those interviews, I don't know about you, it sort of revitalizes me for the rest of the week to come to this point.
It's a reminder of, with all the, in spite of the grind of, trying to get kids to here and there and everywhere, professional commitments, personal commitments, family commitments, that, it's these 15 to 20 minute windows of time that we get with these different student athletes that really makes this, really the best part of this thing, I think, for me, and that probably is for you too, just the opportunity to meet so many interesting people from such a diverse background, and all their different stories, their families. Obviously there's a common theme of the East region and some of these schools that we've literally grown up with and been part of for 20 plus years. Some of us might be getting closer to 30. But yes, it makes it all worth it to have those interactions. And honestly, Frank, I can't necessarily remember back on past seasons as far as was that season 11 or season 5, but I do remember the interviews because it's the people leave an indelible. It's too early to use
indelible mark. Yep, English. Absolutely.
Yeah. So anyway, that's I'm just going to pull Forrest Gump, and that's all I have to say about that. All right.
I do want to say two other things real quick about this. It seems like this show has helped build a bridge between some of the D3 players as well, because one of the comments in the Segala interview we saw come from John Mullen, I believe, from down at Wesley, and they were talking about, good luck down the stretch. They're not going to play each other unless it's in the playoffs, and they actually acknowledged that fact.
Playoffs?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
That's a
Gallaudet
possibility.
and Cortland could play each other in the playoffs as well if they both win out. I pointed that
Yeah,
out
they
on
could.
Twitter as well. But then Will Bellamy,
Yep.
who we didn't even really feature except for the clip with Andre Ross Jr. actually was the receiver. He just stopped his day yesterday and gave us kudos on Twitter to thank us for everything we do. Because I think what happens here is that a lot of the players wouldn't otherwise know necessarily, and we hate dropping this thing on Wednesdays, to be honest. We'd rather do it on Mondays, but there's a couple of reasons in life that it makes it tough to do. We're going to try to, as the season comes to a close, bump it up a little bit to keep it relevant. But it looks like people still watch it on Wednesday, Thursday, the host chat episode, because they don't know how those games played out. And, searching through 34 games to figure it out is a lot to ask, especially when you got film study
35
stuff.
this weekend. It's going to be a lot. Yeah. Just keeps
So-
ramping up.
So, we appreciated Will's, kudos to us on that as well. And we'll see what happens. We got to take him up on the duck hunt / frogging episode down. Yeah. You got to watch the hat when you got that going, I think. Will teach us.
You don't want to see me with a gun, Frank.
Yeah, I have visions of Dick Cheney going on there, and I'm going to stay away from you. But that said, one last thing I want to point out. We've seen some press clippings about Wesley's financial health. Never a comfortable subject, but ever since we saw Mount Ida go under in New England and some other schools really on the brink right now, especially in the basketball side of things on D3Hoops.com, we keep track of this even more. There are concerns about schools right now that have enrollment / financial issues across the board. We've often said, I think not necessarily on the show, but 250 was the number of teams we fielded last year in Division III. We are sliding right now, and I have a feeling 250 may be the all-time cap unless they do something to shake up Division II and Division III eventually. They essentially merge them back together somehow. I doubt that ever happens, but just there are things that may happen eventually to shake things down a little bit. We'll see what happens. Nothing's on the table, folks. Don't think I'm telling you anything, behind the scenes here. But 250 seems like in the current status of Division III, the limit. We hope Wesley makes it through fine. It looks like they're trying to take some good measures to make that happen. But, folks, your schools depend not just on tuition, but your money as well. And while I sound like a PBS pledge drive at this point, I will say flat out, you got to go and give money back to these programs ultimately. I've got to start to reconsider, even with some of the things that have happened between me and Union, we've talked about these things. I'd like to give money to my school again and to help that program out ultimately. I know you're a big
Frank
benefactor
Ross
to Hobart.
School of Law has a nice ring to it, Frank.
I don't.
You
think
already
it's going
teach in
that big.
Miami.
I don't think there's enough zeros in my bank statement to allow that to happen. But
I'll admit, I cut a check to Hobart for their athletic dome. And so, it's one of the things as an alum. I got academic scholarships to attend there, and so I try to pay it forward as well. So, and I've even cut some checks to other schools here and there over the years to help out where I can. But it's definitely the increased cost of attendance, the tuition amounts that just keep going up because of all the added infrastructures and the technology, the Title IX, the this and that, the other thing. It's just getting more and more expensive, and it's a challenge out there for families and for these schools. I think even those with decent endowments are going through some financial struggle. So it's just there will be some kind of course correction to some extent at some point, but the short term, it's a part of what our deal is as alums and fans. You have to try and give back.
There it is.
Here we go.
Cute. Very cute. Here we go. Lightning predictions. We'll be a little fast on these because we want to get to those East rankings as well before this ends. And we're going to start in the CCC with Endicott at Husson. You go first.
Should I say 27 to 24, Frank? No, I think Joe Kowalski and company. They're feeling it offensively. Hudson kind of surprised me in the loss to University of New England, so I'm going to say probably another big offensive explosion for the Gulls. They will win this one 55-31.
Wow. I think it will be closer. I hate to do this to myself, but I do think it will be closer. Not necessarily Becker close, but I would say that Endicott will win the game, but Hudson will challenge them 38-25. How's that? A little bit more reasonable. I can hedge my bets a little bit. Endicott wins.
25. All right.
Things happen. Things happen with those kicks and whatnot.
Okay.
Dean at Gallaudet, boy, for all intents and purposes, this could be a de facto ECFC championship, but not necessarily the Pool A championship scenario, because Dean, as we have said and Round the Nation said this morning, not eligible. So, Gallaudet here, even if they lose the game, could still be alive. We'll see what happens with it. But I think Dean's got the dogs in this race to win this one. The Bulldogs, I guess, technically. I should have probably thought about that as I said it. Dean wins this. But the way they're putting up offense, both of these teams at times, Dean wins this 71-64.
71. Oh man, yeah. I mean, I think Terrell Watts is probably has a good opportunity to light up the Bison secondary, but for some reason, I have a weird feeling that Gallaudet's just going to keep handing the ball off to those two running backs that combined for 400 yards. They'll churn the clock. They'll keep Terrell Watts on the sideline. It's going to be a really high scoring game, but I think Gallaudet will outlast the Bulldogs 42-35.
Wow, I'm down by 3 games here, so there's one that I could pick up right there. See what happens. NUMAC, this won't be the only one necessarily, folks, so I don't think we forgot a team here or a game. MIT at Coast Guard, though, is an important game, maybe an undercard game per se, but you don't underestimate the importance of this. So you will go first on these important ones.
Yeah, so if MIT wins this game, then it sets up a potential conference championship game in 2 weeks against WPI. So must-win game for the Engineers, but Coast Guard at home, the way their defense has been playing, been pretty tough. I'm going to go with Coach Pubna, though, and the Engineers. I think they're going to eke out a close one, 27-24.
I saw it coming a mile away. Coach George,
my favorite score.
Ryan Jones, don't do me wrong here. Coast Guard wins this one. I think they have played enough games to get the experience to win close ones, and this is going to be a close one, I think. 21-20 Coast Guard. That Coast Guard defense has been, I think, underratedly pretty good at times this season.
They've been legit, for sure.
Yep.
Yes, they have.
So, in defense, wins championships. I'm just realizing how tired I am here, but let's not even go there. We're doing the morning thing for a reason, but not the reason I want it. Western Connecticut at Framingham State. I start this one, and I said it the other day. I've got to stick with what I said the other day. Framingham State, to me, in this game is the favorite, even though the records would tell you otherwise. Looking at the fact that their losses were to Endicott and to Brockport, I think Framingham State's just the more battle-tested team out of the two of these. Now, WestCon, here's your chance to prove that 6-0 is by no means a fluke, and I don't think it is a fluke. I just think that when you face a team like Framingham State, we've been saying for a while, it's got nothing to lose in a lot of ways. It's tougher, I think. And ask Plymouth State how things went last week in this situation. That was at Plymouth State. This is at Framingham State. Framingham State wins this 34-31. It's going to be a good game.
Yeah, I think it's also going to be a shootout between James and Wojcinski. I mean, as much as the Framingham State defense has looked awesome, there's enough offensive weapons with Will Daniels and company from the Colonials to make this interesting. But I do feel, Framingham will pull away late and win it 31-21.
NESCAC time. Wesleyan at Amherst. This is kind of the undercard mentality right now. We don't think anything can really happen to Middlebury aside from a travesty of losses here on their part to lose it. So now we're looking at kind of who's going to come in second in this conference, and you start it.
Yeah, so I think, Amherst is going to be a little shell-shocked after, losing to Hamilton for the first time in 20-something years. Wesleyan blown out by Middlebury. I think they were exposed. I will take the Lord Jeff's now Mammoths to win at home, and right there, season a little bit by the score of 35-27.
You said which one? Lord Jeff's? Mammoths?
The Mammoths, yes, Lord Jeff's.
The Mam Jeffs. Or the Lord Offs. We'll figure something out later. Tough one. I think the home team, without the disappointment of last week happening, it makes sense to pick Amherst here. So why would I? Wesleyan wins this game. I got to do something to shake up my life here. Now, Wesleyan is a legit team this season, but I think that, all kidding aside now, Amherst is the better tested team this season again. Wesleyan kind of had an undefeated record that wasn't based on really tough games. They had beaten teams that are offers pretty much coming into it. So I think Amherst does win this game. You're correct, 30-27. As the music restarts one more time, let's have Cortland at St. John Fisher, and I start this one. How can you not love Brett Zagala and his offensive line after that last interview we had there, the first interview with the two players that we had on our show? But, St. John Fisher has this knack when they're in this position of really they're out of it for many intents and purposes, outside looking in. They have this knack of either keeping it close or pulling upsets historically. Cortland wins it after a threat by St. John Fisher during this game, 35-30.
All right, I'm going to also take the Dragons. I think the final score will be something like
71-64?
No, it'll be like 35-28, but the last points, maybe it'll be 42-28, sort of like it was with Morrisville. Portland's going to need to score late to sort of make this game look a little better than it ultimately will be. So I think it's going to probably end up being a one-score game, just based how they've sort of lived dangerously a little bit here. So I'll take Portland by a touchdown. It'll maybe two because they'll score, to sort of make some distance there. But watch out for Fisher at home. That's a 4:00 game on Saturday. I don't think it's going to have a lot of competition viewing-wise, so it should be a good one.
I should be watching it, so I look forward to it. RPI at St. Lawrence. By the way, I'm not traveling this week. We got some big travel plans at somewhere next week, it looks like. So I'm going to get to kind of play behind the scenes with you a little bit about games we're watching. Yeah, exactly. Triple screen, quad screen action, all that stuff. We probably should just have a party. We'll test our capabilities for the Blitz or whenever we decide to do it. This may have been a good week to do it, though, with some of these games. RPI at St. Lawrence, as you see on the screen. I believe this is your start. Yes, it is.
Yeah, the Engineers are still alive in the Liberty League race, and although Grosha and company up in the North Country have given teams fits, I think the Engineers have enough balance offensively to keep that offense on the sidelines, although they had a close call with them last season. I'll take the Engineers to eat this one out, say 28-24.
Game tape is an important thing. We kind of picked on the idea that people cover their video broadcasts, that they show to the masses after the games are done and whatnot. But here's a film study scenario that RPI has got to be looking at. You got to think this week. Union, which gave up 17 points and over 300 yards of passing in the first half to St. Lawrence, basically shut them down in the second half. Something changed. An adjustment was terrific by Union. And RPI, Coach I at RPI is one of the best, it seems like, from the last few years I've seen at picking apart the film. Yep, and coming off a bye, maybe they were there watching it, who knows. But it was, or he is rather, one of the best at doing this. And they're going to pick up on whatever Union did. And I think the order of the games helps RPI ultimately to figure out how to stop Tyler Groshot and win this game. RPI does 30-21. I should have probably gotten the next one up here, and I already know who I'm picking on this one. It's MAC time. Wilkes at Misericordia. Look, I'm going to ride the Brady Williams train until it basically stops and kicks me off. I have to at this point. Misericordia the fact that they started hot last week, the way they did against FDU Florham, and just never looked back, really, that's the way you got to win games. You can't keep going cardiac, the way they do it at times this season and last season. Misericordia wins 34-20.
Yeah, I think I would stick with the Cougars on this one as the home team. Wilkes kind of got brought down to earth a little bit, and they'll give them a good game. But I think something with this Cougars team, hard to pick against them right now. So yeah, I'll take them. Say 35-27.
3 games left. And Jack, Montclair at Wesley. You're first.
I think Wesley has more to play for. They need this win to stay alive in the playoff hunt. They will, have a good shot at a Pool C bid if they can win out. It'll be a close game early, but I think the Wolverines' offense will pull away late to win it, say 35-17.
One thing I was noticing, Montclair got screwed in this whole schedule realignment, to put it bluntly, because this game should have been. If you follow the alternating path of league scheduling at Montclair this year. So we're going back-to-back Wesley years. And the reason it happened is because of the shakeup of the schedule, I'm guessing. So they had to, even out who got home games and all that stuff. So I picked up on this because I thought this game would be at Montclair, and I'd probably be going to it tomorrow. And I'm not, obviously, because going down to Wesley with stuff I've got going on, it just wouldn't work out right. I'd love to go see Coach Knapp and company, and hopefully I will before this season is out. Montclair won 10-9 last year, I believe, in this game. Montclair's defense was really peaking around that time. Montclair's defense right now is peaking. I think we're going to see another, we'll call it 14-13 game in favor of Montclair. I'm going to pick the upset here. You can hear a little bit of my reasosoning in the Around the Nation podcast. This was my game preview.
Sure.
So, go over there and you'll hear more of my dulcet tones on about that game. Yes, exactly. Bonus 1. Hardin Simmons at UMHB. It's not East Region, but it's huge. Number 1, UMHB. Number 15, Hardin Simmons. I got a bad feeling about this game for your crew fan out there, James, because, Hardin Simmons has got to win this rivalry again at some point, don't you think? I mean, I will tell you one thing. I've got inside information on this. Hardin Simmons has been looking at this game, circling this game for the entire last year. Okay, the rhetoric I hear is pretty deep over at Hardin Simmons about Mary Hardin Baylor. Mary Hardin Baylor, though, their concentration has been on a lot more than just Hardin Simmons, who was on a national championship. It's been on, things at one game at a time mentality. Mount Union. There's a lot. NCAA. The one thing that I did see this week, UMHB having a little fun on Twitter and on Facebook with the whole homecoming queen thing, or homecoming court thing. Yeah, congratulations to Tevin Jones on winning that award, as we said on Twitter. I love to know who actually got them to do this. I just have no idea what the reaction was when they said, hey, come on in, we're going to do a video, and just act like the homecoming queen. Okay. Anyway. They did it, and more power to them. And Jefferson Fritz with that hair. Woo! I like the fact they're having fun at UMHB, not taking life too seriously, but then when they get to the field, they do, obviously. It's homecoming. That was the whole point of that Twitter video. UMHB wins in a very good game. A shootout, though. 35-31.
I don't know if it'll be that close. I think Luke Portman's going to run the offense, and I'll get in. You used to always get in trouble, Frank. So now I'll be the one who says stuff to get in trouble. I really just don't think the ASC is that strong. I mean, UMHB is sort of like Mountain Union in the OAC. And John Carroll's ranked, but if you watch that Mountain Union John Carroll game, blue streaks look terrible. Maybe that's because Mountain Union's great and they'll be the national champs this year. I think the crew takes care of business and wins this one going away. Defense is going to really clamp down. They're fired up to beat these guys. And so I'll take the Crusaders to win it 38-17.
I'm going to make a point to you, though. There's a reason I dropped UMHB back to number 2. And they're, to me, the second best team in the country right now, I think, based on what they've lost and, what they've replaced it with and the issues they've had with a couple suspensions and whatnot. Okay, but I think they've taken a step back a little bit. And Hardin Simmons may be slightly better than last year, and so they're closer. And that's why I think, so I get your point. I think, conference as a whole maybe is slightly overrated is where you're going with it. But I think that it makes this a closer game because of the steps taken by the teams. We'll see where it goes. This is going to be interesting, to say the least, and start to prove who UMHB is. If they rout Hardin Simmons, I would really consider flipping back 1 and 2. We'll see what happens. USMMA at WPI, lots of letters, and I believe you start this game.
Yeah, so this is a must-win situation for the Engineers if they want to stay in control of their destiny. It's also a must-win for the Mariners, who were kind of upset at home by Springfield. So I'll give the nod to Justin Nyland and the Engineers, but it's going to be a defensive battle, defensive struggle. Points are going to be hard to come by. I think the Engineers eke out a close win, say 21-17.
Julian Nyland.
Julian, okay. Connor Field, with an O, not an E. Sean McAllen.
You know what? We learned the hard way by doing this. Well, hopefully, we on Jogo the other day was we got that all sorts of wrong. You could just you don't even have enough hands. The number of errors we make a week. Okay, we've grown to live with this whole problem. I got to pick this game. Still, WPI wins this game. They're just, I think, strong at home, especially. Lower scoring, 24-17 WPI. There we go. We're going to, in 3 minutes here, we're going to end this at the 30-minute mark.
Predictions in 2 hours.
Yeah, seriously. It was that bad with all those games. But let's look at Frank's East rankings, and let's justify them a little bit. Now, we didn't put all the mumbo-jumbo SOS numbers, which are very fluid right now, because there's only limited amounts of stats you can put into the strength schedule so far. But there are some, let's say, regional wins to look at, and this creates some of what you're going to see here. We're going to start with number 1, Salisbury. The Wesley win, especially the Oshkosh win, those things will put them at number 1, I think, if we were to stop and put rankings on these things today. That can change. Yeah. Again, their schedule gets decidedly easier, it seems like, for the last few weeks of the season.
Their schedule will go down.
It will. And then other teams will have some big wins probably in the meantime. Someone between Ithaca and Cortland is going to have a big win, obviously. So we'll see. But Ithaca, to me, is number 2 for now. Cortland, though, controls his own destiny, so they shouldn't even worry about it. They're number 2 or number 3. They got to play crazy good right now. So I think in the 640s or something like that, which, again, that's a result of so few games played so far, but it's there, and they have the big win. But Del Val, they lost in quadruple overtime, and results matter, the actual scores and those things. So that's why Del Val is at number 5. Number 6, Western New England, they're going to be looked at as a 5-0 team. We're pretty sure based on some of our conversations historically with committee folks, not just the chair, but others as well. And when you look at their strength of schedule, it's kind of the best of the bunch of the remaining undefeateds right now. Union, their strength of schedule is kind of woeful, but it's not horrendous to the same degree as WPI's, which you'll see at number 9, and Wisconsin number 10. Brockport's back, but they're going to have to prove themselves against Cortland coming up in a week. And if they win that game, they bounce, I think, obviously. But their strength of schedule is pretty good. And, the Hobart loss doesn't look great, but I think you get more credit for quality wins than you do for woeful losses in this whole equation. And so we'll see where it goes. WPI, we just explained. Western Connecticut, we explained. Endicott, I think, is one of those teams that isn't on a lot of people's maps in the region right now necessarily for decision makers, but they shouldn't not be on the map. Endicott's a very good 5-1 team. Their loss was 3 points to Wesley in a game they probably should have won. We get it. But they're number 11 here, but they have room to grow and jump up there. But again, they're going to need to win their conference to be in consideration at all. So Endicott, it doesn't really matter where we rank you ultimately. If you can win your conference, then it's a question of seeding. I get it. But for now, you're on our map, ultimately. And Wilkes, the next best in some ways in the MAC. Misericordia, though, may have something to say about that ultimately. We'll see how that matchup shakes out eventually. And, without Misericordia playing Del Val, the strength of schedule issue becomes a little bit disconcerting. So, Wilkes lost to Del Val, but Misericordia won't play them. And so you have to judge them in a different format here than you do compared to most conferences. Wilkes right now is still in that zone, but there's a lot of games to be played for them as well. Any takeaways on this as we conclude here?
Yeah, no, just like you said, just keep in mind that this is going into week 8. We still have 8, 9, 10, 11. We got 4 more weeks for this thing to shake out. The first regional rankings come out in 2 weeks. The week 9 has some huge games like Ithaca, Union, Cortland, Brockport. That's going to really shape this board. But kind of early on, I do agree with you. Salisbury with the Oshkosh win, with the Wesley win, just barely edges Ithaca out, even though Ithaca is technically higher in the top 10 rankings or what have you. This is the formula that we've kind of learned over the years, talking to different NCAA chairs. So this makes sense to me. I think it's good for Wesley fans that they're as high up as they are based on the criteria. So basically, it looks like if they can win out, there's a good chance that they will be sitting atop of that leaderboard as far as pool season. And probably there's only going to be one team from the East region that gets one. So it's going to come down to a dogfight between probably Wesley and the either the Cortland Ithaca or the Union Ithaca loser, basically.
I'll tell you though, the E8 and or Liberty League and or NJAC end up with a team with one loss on the outside looking in, it's tough to think that they can't get 2 in this year somehow. And it's going to really come down to the numbers. It's going to come down to strength of schedule and a quality win scenario. Mm-hmm. So let's say Union beats Ithaca, Ithaca beats Cortland, and Wesley stays where they are. You've got a real potential there that Ithaca, because of the strength of schedule and quality win, could, for all intents and purposes, go, and Wesley could go in that scenario, or vice versa, if you want to go in the order they may get picked off the board. So that's the thing you got to think about here. The East, this is a numbers game. They do some level of subjectivity. We've grown to accept that it's not completely objective because there's so few games played. They have to go behind the numbers a little bit, but the numbers are where they start and order these teams by. And so when you talk about teams blocking other teams on the board because you only take the top one from each region, and compare them, it matters who's up front in those discussions. And then they'll get a little subjective about it because it's tough to compare teams from the East, North, South, and West when there's no comparative results to go with. Those are really where numbers start going, but subjective, look tests and all that stuff happen. But
and the other little subtlety, Frank, that we don't talk about as much is that ultimately the 4 number 1 seeds are really going to be the bracket headers. There isn't an East region bracket, even though we talk about it as if it's a thing. And in certain ways, the last couple of years, it has been sort of. But, a Wesley could end up in a quote unquote South bracket. They could end up in the Mary Hardin Baylor bracket. So could Gallaudet in DC if they end up being the rep from the ECFC. They can be shipped south. There are some other teams, even Del Val. Either way.
The North is not that far away from DC when it gets down to it. It's within 500 miles, I think, of Ohio and Pennsylvania and other teams that are in the North. So they are very mobile. A lot of these teams are very mobile that are on, let's say, the mid-Atlantic portion of the map. Those are the most mobile teams we have. The New England teams are not because they start to run into problems once they hit Western New York at that point. But the point here gets down to this. You may not like this ordering, and it may not even follow the top 25 in reality, but this is kind of the way this is going to work ultimately. There are numbers that they have to follow, or criteria that to follow with certain numbers attached to them, and then once they apply those numbers, they can start shifting teams slightly, but you're never going to see them completely ignore the numbers. It just doesn't happen. So they are charged by the NCAA to do it this way. And that's when we kind of looked at this week. That's how we did it. Next week, I believe, is their first rankings that we'll never see. They essentially start with a baseline rankings next week as a committee across the country, the RACs, Regional Advisory Committees. And then the following week are the first ones you will see during week 10. And then during week 11, we'll see a second one. A third one gets produced by them after the games of week 11 have been played. And obviously they use those at the committee level to pick the field ultimately and seed things. So that's what you have to look forward to. We're going to try to get Jim Catanzaro on our show to explain all this, at least after the picks are made. Maybe even before, because Jim, I think, doesn't mind getting a little extra camera time, and he's very informative, so we don't mind having him on one bit as well. Right. We are at 36 minutes. That means we need to go. Sorry about any streaming issues we had here. Hopefully the recording is in one piece and intact. But no matter what, folks, enjoy Week 8 games. I'm going to, with you, JB, from afar, we will kind of tune in and pick out the best of the best, and watch us on Twitter at D3FB Huddle. Until then, enjoy your Friday.